Hello guys, welcome to another episode of Clues, Cues and Reviews, and today we're looking at Fairy Tail 512 Sting, the White Shadow Dragon. And I'll be honest, I don't know what to think of this chapter because of what happens in it, but there's a lot of things in there that makes me think, and I have a review. I'll try to keep it short, sweet and full of content, the meat, and hopefully we'll get into it. So let's talk about how it starts. So we get this point where basically Sting is pushing back Rakhied. And the main thing that's making the difference is the shadow ability. So ultimately it's reinforcing the point of the twin dragons, teamwork, and so on and so forth. So the difference is the shadow part of the process. What this does is finally pushes Rakhied to show this ultimate attack of his called RIP, or Rest in Peace. And it's like a spell or incantation that puts you to eternal sleep. It made me think of the Wizard of Oz for some reason. The poppy fields where Dorothy's running towards the Emerald City and the poppies and she falls asleep. And it made me think of that for whatever reason. So that was going through my head. And then we find out that a good way to get, because it's to do with your senses, your eyes, your vision, your feeling, your sight, sound, everything else. Rogue on the floor kind of said, look, go into the shadow. It'll sharpen your senses, and with the help of Kagura they do that. Now it's important because it reinforces two things. One, teamwork is key, and Kagura's ability definitely helps. And number two, the Sting that we know here is nowhere as skilled as the Sting from the future. So with that help, he basically gets in there, comes back and does that netted attack that basically deals damage to Rakhied. Rakhied may be defeated, but he's definitely not dead. He's down, but he's not out, because we see him looking up at the fairy tale sign saying, "Father!" Like any dramatic person would. Again, this whole process made me think of a few different things. So, first thing I thought about was how strong is Shadow Sting White, whatever, Shadow White Dragon Sting, whatever, now compared to the guy from the future, and how strong are they in general? Is it more of his style, or his element basically help him win, or has he grown to the point where the inner ability is coming out because he's passionate compared to before where he was obnoxious? Now I also thought about something which was interesting. Sting was given the shadow force, or the shadow element, to become a white shadow dragon, right? What would Rogue become if Sting gave him his white ability, and could that happen? I know from the future we knew that Sting was going to be able to do this fine, because if it came from the future we know it can happen. But what would happen if it was the other way around? Just a question I'd like to throw out there. Now another thing I wanted to touch on was the whole Kagura thing. Now, Kagura was basically using a gravity technique, and it made me think of a few things. Number one, it made me think, how would she do in a fight with Blue Note? Now basically Blue Note has been fodderized. I know he got one-shotted practically by Natsu, but Natsu is E&D, so it is what it is. But before that, he was a formidable opponent to the point where he was only really defeated by Gildarts. So how would she fare, do you reckon, from a gravity on gravity type of thing against him? Also, it made me think of some other sword gravity user from One Piece, Admiral Fujitora. How would that matchup be? It would be cool for a death battle, don't you think? It's an interesting point to consider. So that pretty much wraps up the Rakhied side of things. It felt for me a bit meh, but I think it's one of those things that has to happen to move the story along to deal with such a guy. Because bearing in mind, they're like the three emperors, you could say, of Alvarez. You've got Rakhied, you've got August, and you've got Eileen. So this kind of puts him out of commission, for at least for the time being, so we can focus on moving things with the other two and hopefully find a resolution for them as well. Then we kind of go back into Natsu's dream kind of sequence, dream land, dream world, and we find a little bit more key information. And I think this is what I liked about the chapter, ignoring the whole fight ending with Rakhied and Sting. This I found a lot more interesting, because we find out that the scarf is built off the scales of dragons, and it was knitted together by Anna. So that was the gift, and you get that message. Do you really think Igneel knitted this together with his own hands? It was Anna. She liked helping people, and it goes back to the idea that his Natsu's life is so entwined with a family of Lucy's, the fact that he was sent from the future, sent from the past to the future by Anna. Then the whole thing, because there's a lineage from the whole thing back in the day, and then Lucy's mom. So they're all interconnected, and I like the fact that we're reminded of that. Then we get a few kind of specific phrases that I want to kind of address. So the first thing is, now that your death draws near, and then we're gonna get to the final answer, I guess. So this for me means a few different things. It could just literally mean him dying, which I don't think is going to be the case, but it could be him dying as normal Natsu, because bearing in mind Natsu was dead to begin with, so he wasn't never really alive after the childhood accident with the dragon embers, but he was brought back using ether nano or Etherius cells, and ultimately I think his death as a human now would fully cultivate the power of END, because END is a demon, and that is the next stage, I guess, of his evolution. And then we get this whole thing about if Zeref dies, Natsu dies by Happy to everybody else. I think it's important to address that, because the only person that really knew that was the people from Alvarez, really, but Natsu and Happy. And with Natsu down, Happy is the only person that can tell his friends. Ultimately, that's important, because from a storytelling point of view, for them to ever find a solution to that problem, they need to know about it. And this is that first step in them knowing. So ultimately, that's going to set up at some point a plot point, or like a decision or a journey to find the cure for this. Could this be where Mavis gives her life for Natsu so that he can live on, because she's technically dead in a coma, and if Zeref dies, then that's part of her love gone, and she's done her best to guide the new generation as far as she can go. So there's a possibility that I think that's somehow going to be played into this. I don't think it's going to get used on Acnologia, and at some point in a future arc they'll probably deal with him. And that's pretty much the nuts and bolts of this chapter, and the next chapter is called Flower Circle, which will be interesting. I have no idea what that's about. 513 Flower Circle coming out next week. I hope you enjoyed the way I broke down this chapter and gave my thoughts as I went along. I'm trying to do change up with my content, and I hope you enjoyed that, and maybe it triggers something for yourself that you'd like to discuss in the comment section below, or whatever I post it on Reddit. As always, thank you very much for continuing this journey with me by showing your support, by viewing, by commenting, by liking, by subscribing. If you haven't done any of that so far, this is your opportunity to do that. I greatly appreciate that, and I will see you next time.